On this edition of the program, yes, you should take Stephen A. Smith seriously as a candidate for president. Keir Starmer comes to the United States. We have an Epstein files debacle, and Claire Meynial of Le Point comes to talk about Ukraine, CPAC, and so much more. Jam-packed episode. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for February 28th. 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here in Austin, Texas. We are barreling through this year, huh? It's already about to be March. Spring is springing, sprouting. Spring has sprouted. We have Claire Meynial of Le Point on the show. You guys said that you really liked her, among the favorite guests that you had in our survey. And so you ask, I listen. She's back on the show. And we are going to talk about Ukraine. We are going to talk about CPAC. This was recorded a little earlier in the week. It was before the mineral deal. So we should note that as I am recording this, it is on Thursday afternoon. It is after Keir Starmer has met Trump. We'll talk about that in the update as well. But on Vladimir Zelensky, I think I even say it in this Claire interview. Zelensky's going to be in town when you listen to this on Friday. And when Trump was asked about calling him a dictator, Trump's response was, "Oh, did I say that? I can't remember. I can't believe I said that. Wow, that's crazy. I told you, people. I said as soon as the mineral rights deal was done that Vladimir Zelensky, and I think that you're going to see this today, he's going to be a brave man, very brave man. Not a lot of people would be able to do it. And a tough negotiator, boy, do I know it. And I know tough negotiators. I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen." But anyway, the interview with Claire is still great stuff, and you guys are going to enjoy that in a little bit. We will get to this Epstein stuff as well. But I'm going to start here. Stephen A. Smith is a sports commentator. He has now expanded what used to be his radio show into an online and YouTube program. One that covers stuff that is sports, but now can branch out a little bit. You know, he's already on so much ESPN content talking about the ins and outs of the NBA and other sports, but now he can also go into the world of media. He can talk about politics. And it is in the world of politics where he has ruffled some feathers, including those of the old hand James Carville, who is a very big sports fan himself, probably knows Stephen A. Smith very well, saying that Smith's criticisms of the Democratic Party, specifically that the Democratic Party doesn't have the talent to reach the people, is unfounded. And maybe, Stephen A., you should stick to sports. Now, I very much disagree with what James Carville said, and I agree with how Stephen A. Smith responded to it. But I want to take a step back and just explain to people who are unaware of the bombastic, loquacious nature of Stephen A. Smith that he is somebody that is a television savant. All right? Stephen A. Smith commands a sizable portion of ESPN's airwaves. In fact, you may well know Stephen A. Smith without ever intentionally turning on ESPN. If you have ever been to a sports bar or just some kind of restaurant or an airport where ESPN is just turned on and you have seen an animated black man talking about something, it's almost assuredly Stephen A. Smith if it happened at a certain time of day. He works a lot. And he has built a reputation and a relationship with the audience. Fun little personal fact. So when I used to live in Oakland, it coincided with the era that the Golden State Warriors were a dynasty. They were winning championships, or at least in the finals, pretty much every year for a series of times. And at that moment, they were playing in Oracle Arena in Oakland. First Take, the show that Stephen A. Smith does, took place, emanated, they did it live in the cities where the NBA finals were. And in Oakland, the best place to do that was the Lake Chalet on Lake Merritt in Oakland. So I would go for a run every morning around 5:30. And 5:30 is when on East Coast time, they were in the middle of First Take. So it became an annual tradition for me to be running by Lake Chalet on Lake Merritt and hear from the outside of the building the explosive, percussive pontifications of one Stephen A. Smith. It always let me know that it was that time of year. Let me get to Stephen A. Smith's clips here. This is Smith responding to James Carville.
I religiously say I'm no political aficionado. I religiously say I don't know politics like that. I read, I watch the news, I'm a conscientious observer. But I do have to ask you a question, Mr. James Carville, albeit rhetorically. You do know that you're talking to a voter, right? Could that be one of the reasons why y'all lost? Just a thought. Because you sound like one of those old curmudgeons that want things to stay or be the way that they used to be, and you're resentful, harboring an abundance of animosity because you're not being heard. That's not Stephen A. Smith's fault, sir. That's that damn Democratic Party that I was talking about.
Smith goes on to say that he has every man bona fides. And while he is not hiding from the fact that he is a television personality, he oftentimes says in any time he talks about politics that one of the biggest reasons why he wouldn't want to do it is because of the pay cut, making pretty good money on ESPN, but also that he has a layman's understanding of the political world. But does the establishment really want to change that? Smith asked.
The Washington Post wrote an article about me today. Got a damn halo over my head trying to act like I'm Jesus. Like I'm some savior. Ridiculous. But I don't mind. It was a good article, and I'm not insulted by it. I'm simply saying, to paint me in that picture, no, I'm not that dude. But in that article, Will Cain, my former colleague at ESPN, now a host at Fox News, with a weekday show every weekday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm happy for him. I'm proud of him. In the same breath that he was complimentary of me, he said, I didn't know enough about the issues. He's absolutely right. I never said I did. I don't study Capitol Hill like I study sports. Do y'all want me to? Do you know what kind of havoc I'd wreak if I sat down for a few weeks and just buried my brain and my face and my mind into the nuances of politics and what transpires on Capitol Hill? Are y'all sure y'all want that smoke? You sure about that? I mean, because it's like you're daring me to, Mr. James Carver. It's like you're daring me to. You sure? Are you sure? Might want to think about that. Because you see, when you sit back and you allow your ire to subside, and you embraced the true, authentic words that I was spewing. I wasn't questioning Josh Shapiro. I wasn't questioning Wes Moore. I'm not even questioning somebody like Harold Ford Jr., who works on the 5 on Fox News. I think that the composure that he shows and what have you, he's a former representative. I think he could do some good things. All of these people are more qualified than me. All of them are more knowledgeable than me. How difficult is it to get knowledgeable about politics if I really, really wanted to make some noise? All it takes is a few weeks and a few phone calls with people that I can clearly talk to because I got them on speed dial. It ain't that hard.
And he's right. The establishment does not want Stephen A. Smith in the Democratic primary. Full stop. Absolutely not. You don't. And the reason why James Carville went after Stephen A. Smith was because he felt that Stephen A. Smith was denigrating the bench of talent that the Democrats had. There is a belief that there is a very bright future for the Democratic Party because you have a lot of heretofore untested talent. Gretchen Whitmer, Wes Moore are two of the ones that come up constantly. Andy Beshear in Kentucky. You hear a lot of people talk about these kinds of names. Shapiro in Pennsylvania as well. You want to know a way that you can expose them? Put them on stage with Stephen A. Smith when there's 23 people. Do that. Do that at your peril. Honestly, if you are going to goad this man into doing it, I don't know if he'd win the primary. The Democratic system is different than the Republican system. It would require Stephen A. Smith to conquer the superdelegates in a way that probably is impossible. But the one thing that he would do in a television contest, that's what a debate is. A debate is not a fair exchange of ideas where you get to actually sit down and understand who would be better at running the country. A televised debate is a televised version of that conversation, which means you have to speak in sound bites, you have to speak in a charismatic way, and you have to stick in the audience's mind. Guess what Stephen A. Smith does every day? It's going to be the exact same thing that happened with Donald Trump in Cleveland, Ohio in 2016. He got up on stage, he got one of the first questions, and he blew everybody else out of the water. Not because Donald Trump had a better handle on the facts, not because Donald Trump was a more considered choice for president, or had the political talent, quote unquote, of everybody else that was up on that stage. And there were people like Senator Marco Rubio, who was thought to be a future of the party. Guess what? He's a part of the administration now, but he was blown off that stage. Jeb Bush, thought to be somebody that would be a favorite to be president. He was banished to the shadow realm after that. Nobody could keep up with a guy who had been on television for decades. And if you want somebody that quite possibly, dare I say, quite frankly, is better on television than Donald Trump, has more reps on television than Donald Trump, is used to debating on television, that's Stephen A. So no, if you are a part of the Democratic machine and you are invested in believing that Wes Moore, that Cory Booker, that Gretchen Whitmer, that Andy Beshear, that Josh Shapiro is going to be the magic savior that will save the Democratic Party, then what you don't want is for them to take a verbal ass kicking from somebody who delivers verbal ass kickings on television daily. And if you do, James Carville, I got one piece of advice for you. Stay off the weed. It's a Stephen A. Smith clip. It's a famous quote of his. But I know it because he's really good on television. All right, the update and then Claire. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. If you want 2 bonus episodes each and every week, you got to get it at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. What did we talk about on Thursday? Oh, we talked about the House passing a budget, something I didn't think was possible. I had a little bit of inside gossip on that as well. Jeff Bezos restructuring the WAPO opinion page and the Trump administration's plans to take on rising egg prices. All that. Talked about all that. That's a bonus episode that you get exclusively when you support this show. Keep independent journalism in business and allow me a platform to say things in the year of our Lord 2025 like Stephen A. Smith is a serious presidential candidate and you should doubt him at your peril. Who else is saying that? Nobody's saying that. I'm saying that. That's why. That's why you need to pay attention to this show. And that's why I thank you for your financial support, because quite possibly no one would pay for this except for you guys. So I thank you. Let's get into some of the stories that we didn't have a chance to cover. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, met with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House to discuss critical issues, notably the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the future of NATO. The meeting is considered one of the most consequential between a British Prime Minister and a U.S. president since World War II, with the strained relationship between Washington, D.C. and the European continent. Starmer initiated a charm offensive, presenting Trump with a letter from King Charles inviting him to the UK for a second state visit, a gesture described as unprecedented. In their discussion, Starmer expressed gratitude for Trump's effort at fostering peace talks in Ukraine and emphasized the UK's commitment to increasing defense spending, aiming to reach 2.5% of GDP by 2027 and 3% by 2035. Trump revealed plans to sign the rare earth mineral deal with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, suggesting that the presence of American workers in Ukraine would serve as a security guarantee against Russian aggression. He stated, "I don't think anyone's going to play around if we're there with a lot of workers." The leaders also discussed the strategic Chagos Islands, with Trump indicating support for the UK's plan to cede control to the Mauritians while maintaining a long-term lease for military purposes. The move could resolve long-standing geopolitical tensions in the Indian Ocean region. Starmer's approach focused on appealing to Trump's economic interests, highlighting the potential for increased investment and trade between the UK and the US, and he underscored the special relationship between the two nations and mutual benefits of continued collaboration. This meeting underscores the evolving dynamics of international relations between the two, and we're going to talk more about Europe's relationship with the United States with Claire in a second, but here's my sense. I think Trump likes dealing with European leaders one-on-one because he likes the optics of everybody coming to D.C. He likes the optics of having them sit in the Oval Office and him calling the questions with all the press surrounding him. It's situations that he's comfortable in that they might not be. And he likes that. He also likes being magnanimous. Remember, Donald Trump is somebody who desperately wants to be loved. And so whenever he gets to be the special boy in the center of things, I think he is at his happiest. He likes to be the red hot center of attention. As we mentioned at the top of the show, it's not surprising to me that he has now changed his tune on Zelensky. It is not shocking to me that we are not going to get him say a lot of negative things about Putin or Russia right now, because for him, the deal is all that matters. He wants to make the deal, and he's not going to be bullied into saying something that could make the deal further away as opposed to closer. Obviously, there's a lot going on. This is just one ball in the air, but I assume that the further we are away from the dictator talk, the happier Europe is. But who knows? I'm not European. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi released a set of documents titled the Epstein Files Phase 1, pertaining to the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. These documents, although heavily redacted, were anticipated to shed light on Epstein's extensive network and illicit activities, but upon review, primarily contained information already available to the public, leading to criticism from various quarters. Epstein's history of abusing underage girls and his association with high-profile individuals, of course, has been the subject of intense public interest and controversy since his death by suicide in 2019. There then was this. Bondi sent a stern letter to FBI Director Kash Patel on Thursday as well, accusing the FBI's New York field office of withholding thousands of pages of documents related to the Epstein investigation. Bondi stated that despite prior assurances of having received the complete set of Epstein files, the 200 pages, she immediately learned of the existence of additional material. She demanded the delivery of all records, including documents, audio, and video recordings, by 8 a.m. February 28th. Bondi also announced an internal investigation into the matter and instructed Patel to propose appropriate personnel action within 2 weeks. This was a big kerfuffle on social media, and here's how it played out. You had a set of influencers that were in the White House and then were photographed by assembled press holding binders saying Epstein Files Phase 1. Among them, libs of TikTok, Mike Cernovich, Jessica Reed Krause of House and Habit, and former guest on the show, Chad Prather. Now, that was a big thing. People were like, wait, why do these influencers have these files? Why aren't they just posted online? And then some people who have done a lot of work, have worked a long time on the Epstein case, saying that, look, this isn't going to be anything super big. It's literally just a lot of the information that's already been out there. So then Bondi comes out and says, okay, well, the reason why is because the FBI is holding back information, and we demand that the information be made public. People in Congress were pretty peeved about this as well. The House Judiciary Committee made a joke posting a link to the Epstein files, and then it was a Rickroll. I guess that they were mad about it. I don't think they were taunting people. I don't know if the joke landed the way they wanted. And then Anna Paulina Luna, who had a blistering story about her staff, hit her today from the Daily Beast. She is in charge of declassifying public secrets, including Epstein. And she said that she was not given any of this material beforehand. So clearly, Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice and whomever coordinated this release, doesn't seem like the left hand knew what the right hand was doing. I don't think anyone would look at this and say that it was well executed. That being said, it does appear that there might be more stuff forthcoming. And if you care about heretofore unheard information about Jeffrey Epstein, then, that's good news. Possibly. Not good news today. Confusing, weird news today. But possibly good news down the road. And finally, the U.S. Supreme Court granted Donald Trump a temporary victory by overturning a lower court ruling that required his administration to release $1.5 billion in frozen USAID funding. Chief Justice John Roberts issued an administrative stay, delaying the deadline when the court considers the case. The Trump administration argued against the immediate release of funds, which had been halted since Trump's second term began. This marks Trump's first Supreme Court win amid the 94 legal challenges to his policies. The administration has aggressively targeted USAID, claiming it contradicts America First priorities, with Trump and Elon Musk spreading the information about the suspended payments. A federal judge has ruled in favor of USAID contractors seeking payment for completed work, but the Supreme Court's order blocked this deadline. Some USAID employees also leaving. There was a protest outside of the offices where people were clapping. Not exactly in the best form, my opinion. But it is good to keep an eye on these things that are like actually happening, as opposed to just, reacting to some of the ping pong and the back and forth. Lot going on. There's going to be a lot to talk about on the Sunday shows. And that's one of the exclusive episodes that you get when you support this show. Head on over there right now. Take politics seriously.com. 2 bonus episodes each and every week if you are on our team. All right, let's get to Claire. Welcoming back to the show, one of your favorites. We had our little survey that we put out, and even if you didn't remember her name, let alone even tried to spell it, which I would probably fail several times, you did know her and you did love her. Claire Meynial from Le Poix. Welcome back to the PX3
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You have had a busy week.
Yeah.
You often cover the aggressive boundaries of the American right, and so you were at CPAC, and then there was a counter CPAC convention. The Proud Boys came back to the Capitol and held a news conference, and one of them got arrested. And then just to top it all off, the president of France came to the White House, and you were there to cover that. Let's start with Macron.
Yes.
What was the sense of that visit? Obviously under complicated circumstances with what is happening in Ukraine, but what was your read?
So yeah, you have to see the context for Europe right now. It's kind of difficult to understand their American ally, their American friend, and this happens after the Munich conference, which was something that. So I'm aware that there is so much going on in the U.S. that people might not be aware of what happened. That it's a big European security conference that happens every year, and you go there to talk about security issues, and so Ukraine is front and center in everybody's mind right now in Europe. And JD Vance was there, and he didn't really talk about Ukraine, but he talked about how Europe has lost its values. And he spoke especially about freedom of speech. I can't tell you the number of people who wrote, texted, called me saying, "What is he talking about exactly? What is this?" And Europe is many countries, but like in France, freedom of speech is kind of what we do. People protest every day. that's a Sunday activity. That's a coming of age thing. Like, one of my best months in my whole life, I must have been 19, and I can't really remember what it was all about. I think it was 95 or 48. So, and it lasted for a whole month in Paris. You can't be fired for protesting a whole month. So teachers were also. That's what we do.
Yes.
So then you have Macron arriving in DC after we've all been lectured by Vance. And after Trump has been saying that Zelensky is a dictator, Hegseth has said that it would be foolish to think that Ukraine can go back to the pre-2014 borders, that NATO is not realistic, and that they won't send troops anymore, which is, coming from the administration of somebody who's written The Art of the Deal, which is, and the whole purpose of the book is to say you need to negotiate from a position of strength. Doesn't sound like very strong. So Macron arrives because he's extremely worried about what's going to happen to Ukraine, because contrary to what Vance said in his Munich speech, where he says that the threat to Europe is not China, Russia, it's the enemy within, as Macron repeats, Russia is an existential threat. If a peace is signed and it ends up being violated, like Minsk 1 and 2, then it becomes a real threat to other European countries. So that's the context.
And so this was hastily put together. This was not a pre-scheduled visit. This all happens as the Ukraine stuff unfolds over the last 2 weeks.
Yes, exactly. It's a reaction to Europeans realizing that they're not being associated with the negotiations at all, that Trump and Putin want their own Yalta, redefining borders. And in that context, it was really interesting at CPAC. I focused this year. It was my 6th CPAC, mind you. And this year, yes, I know. I was just like, oh, I've been here way too many times. I focused.
I think as long as you bring your punch card the next time you get a free entry.
Yeah, maybe. I have some sort of MAGA hat, maybe. So they had mega hats this year. Make Europe great again.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was interviewing all these Europeans, and it was really interesting to see the reactions. Even like all the parties who were attending, they're all what we qualify like far-right Europeans, but none of them would tell you that Zelensky was a dictator or that he was the aggressor, contrary to what Trump had been saying. Yeah. So it was extremely interesting. And yes, they were, especially there was a man from Bulgaria who was saying that he was extremely worried because it reminded him of Yalta, where he said, we thought we could be building democracies in Eastern Europe, and we didn't know while we were thinking about this, dreaming about this, trying to organize this, that we had been sold behind our backs already. So they're extremely worried of what might happen to them.
It's very, very interesting to see where Europe is with all this. So the Vance speech, which, free speech means many things to many people. I think right now to the online right, it means, can I post this and get banned from Facebook for it? There was the 60 Minutes segment that went viral of showing German law, obviously, where they do have much tighter rules on what you can say, what you can't say online. Those are things that are very front of mind for the American right, and yet the negotiation here with the end of the war in Ukraine is going to be something that obviously the Europeans have a much closer eye on, because they have to deal with it in many different ways. France was smart enough to really, really invest in nuclear energy over the last, several, decade plus. And so they've been able to wean themselves off of Russian gas in a way that Germany, on the other hand, really hasn't. They've shut down nuclear plants, and so they've become more dependent. And depending on who you believe, they probably still are dependent. They're just buying Russian gas through proxies, even though there are sanctions now. So it does seem to be this whiplash of the Biden administration, which was very gung-ho on, we will be with Ukraine for as long as Ukraine needs us, no matter what, to the Trump team, which, I don't know where to put it. The one thing that I know for sure about Donald Trump is that he very much wants all the hostages out of Gaza and the Ukraine war to be over in 100 days, so he can say that he did these two things that Joe Biden could not do in 100 days. I think that is, speed is a key motivator for him. And I can understand where, from the European continent's perspective, it's like, well, wait a minute. Even if we might have thought that the Biden State Department was maybe a little bit too bullish on Ukraine's ability to take back Crimea, this seems a little aggressive.
And that's also, Europe has been dealing with Russia for a while now, and they also fear that Trump
some would say for centuries.
For a few centuries. And they fear that Trump is being played. Really, it's just, Russia has signed deals before. Like that, what's being said on the right here in the U.S. is that Putin did what he did because Ukraine was going to get into NATO. What's the excuse for 2014 then? I mean, it's really it's an imperialist will from on the part of Russia, and that's the way it is. It's a very, very big country with and Putin has those dreams of grandeur, and so there's this fear in Europe of, okay, let's for sure negotiate a peace. We want people to stop dying too. Just let's make sure it's a real peace. And what was really interesting yesterday at the White House was seeing how Macron was really insisting on the first part of the deal, which would be the deal between Ukraine and the US for the rare minerals. Because Macron is just thinking, okay, the US now has stopped being an ally on traditional democratic Western values. We are going to bet on transactions because Trump is a transactional man. And if he has assets in Ukraine, he will make sure that they can't be attacked. That's really his thinking right now, as the U.S. is a transactional ally.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's, this is going to air later in the week, but we spoke with Brian Sack on Wednesday's episode, where, that's one of the things that is so hard about just our modern media world in general, is that that deal I have seen reported multiple different ways, where either that this is an American pitch to Ukraine, or I have also seen it reported that that Zelensky knew which side of his bread he was buttered, and he brought it to Trump and said, hey, this is the way that we go forward. This is, if we give you this, then you get security guarantees. Now it seems like that's probably going to happen.
Oh yeah.
And you have to wonder whether or not, the rhetoric from Trump stops. Does Zelensky become less of a dictator when the mineral deal is signed? Did Russia invade after we have the possibility of recouping what was spent on the war? Is that the reason why the mean social media stuff happened, or is it something more fundamental? Because it wasn't but a month and a half ago that Donald Trump was saying nasty things about Russia on Truth Social, and now he, thinks that Vladimir Putin is a wise stoic.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, remember he said he was a genius and he was very savvy when he invaded Ukraine in 2022. Those were his first reactions. So, and what you're saying, it's very true. We don't really know how the deal came about, who had the idea. But either way, it means that for somebody like Zelensky, he thinks, okay, the way I get to Trump is through money. I can't expect him to side with the traditional American allies. And we've seen this at the UN. It was yesterday where the US voted on the same side as Russia, Belarus, North Korea, and 14 allies from Moscow. Yeah. That's just that's a new era. That's a massive thing.
This was on the resolution to commemorate the third anniversary of the war.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a symbol. And I can tell you it's been very organized. There was a big campaign on the side of the U.S. to make sure, it was voted this way. It's when you hear people who were at the UN at this time, it's a compelling story.
Yeah. I mean, look, maybe it's just these books that I've been reading recently, but We Have Never Been Woke by Musa Al-Gharbi is one of them that talks about symbols, that there is a class of people for which most of the humans who have been on this show are probably a part of, I am certainly a part of, that come up through a certain way of thinking, go to college, and we are very focused on symbols, the symbolic element of what you just said, like what happened at the UN. And it's pretty clear at this point that Donald Trump does not share that same idea. Now, whether or not you believe, or maybe he does, right? And he is specifically sending a symbolic shot across the bow, or it's a situation where he doesn't care. And right now he's like, I need to make a deal. Russia has the power in this deal, so I need to meet them halfway, and everybody else, up to and including all of our allies on the European continent.
Yeah.
They can get in where they fit in, but ultimately, what moves this entire mechanism is American money and American sanctions on Russia.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
Those are the two things that one matters to Ukraine, the other matters to Russia. Those are the only two things that matter, and that's what he's going to wield. Everything else is garbage.
Yeah, but I mean, still, voting with North Korea and Russia and Belarus.
Not great. Not great.
Awesome. You know, it's
Not great.
Big change compared to post 1945 Yalta politics, world politics. And you know, countries on the other side have sent troops to Afghanistan for the U.S. I can't remember how many men Canada lost. The U.K. lost more than 500 in Afghanistan for the U.S. France lost 60 or something like that. But, you know, they went to war for the U.S. because we have that UN resolution, what is it, Chapter 5, that says that if Article 5 that says that if an ally is attacked, you go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that is really what's kind of underlining this from the European perspective, is that it's like, okay, look, sign whatever deal that you want with Putin. Like this is what it is. We know he's a liar. We know that at some point he's going to push things further. He is always going to push things further. He has, like you mentioned, delusions of grandeur, which everybody gets this wrong. Not to unite the Soviet Union, no. It's the Russian Federation, because he believes that the Soviet Union screwed up by giving independence to each of the other countries, and that it should be all Russia.
It's even Catherine the Great before.
Yeah.
The Empire.
Yeah. The Empire, the Russian Empire. So, you know, they're like, hey, look, when this happens, you make your deal, whatever, end this war. Yeah. Probably could have been done differently. I'm sure that there's a variety of thought on the European continent when you actually get people inside closed doors to say when and how this could have been wound down at a different time. But make your deal now. But when he pushes the line into a NATO country, when he pushes it, because now there are two more countries that are NATO members, that were made NATO members over the last 2 years, that do share borders with Russia. Like, are you going to barrel in? Like, is this going to happen? And you know, that's really where the duality of Trump, you have to kind of play this guessing game of like, all right, is he the guy who believes that Putin is a wise, savvy man who is taking what he can? Or is he the guy who said, I would nuke Moscow if you go into Ukraine? And it's like,
I mean, yesterday was...
Who knows? It's cold comfort.
Yesterday was pretty striking, because you had Macron doing those lengthy answers, and I don't cover French politics, so it was like, wow, he talks a lot, and those are very long sentences with lots of concepts and a lot of big words. And on the other hand, you have Trump repeating that none of this would have happened if he'd been president at the time. We were just like, okay, we're back at CPAC or at a Trump rally in 2023 again. But also, most of all, he's giving absolutely no assurance, no guarantee. When Macron says, "Okay, we're ready," the Europe is ready to send troops, and that's mostly France and the UK. Yeah. We can send troops. You got your deal with Ukraine, so we have a ceasefire. Europe sends troops, and that's not the EU, by the way. That's France and the UK.
That's
and
France.
The UK.
Yeah. And the UK.
And then we really have some sort of real peace, long-lasting peace.
Yeah.
And we'd like to know if you guys, would sort of help with when we're send our troops, and if they're attacked, and is there any guarantee you would step in? And Trump refuses to answer. He repeats, I don't know, countless times. So I think once we have a deal, Putin won't attack. Like he's not going to want to do that. I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we all got out saying, but it's hard to know if any of what Macron said really happened, because anything Trump said, he just said, yeah, we had a really good conversation, and French is a really lovely language, and Notre Dame is nice, and we had a good dinner.
So beautiful, yeah.
Well, which is not his thing, to make fun of people's accents. But did you follow that thing about that French reporter asking a question?
He's done it a few times where he's. I mean, to his credit, he's probably done more press
Oh, yeah.
availabilities in the month that he has been in office than Biden did in his 4 years. But very often it's foreign press, and very often Trump will, instead of trying to be diplomatic, just say, "You have a lovely accent, but I have no idea what you're saying."
Afghan woman
that's his
and then a
line.
man from India, I think. But the first one was a French woman, which now it makes me think I need to practice my English a lot because,
Always forerunners, the French. There's the always breaking ground.
Yeah.
Always breaking
Did you
ground.
get that? There was a really good question from a French journalist yesterday, which was, "You're a deal maker. In a deal, someone has to give something to get something. What are you giving Putin?"
Yeah.
And he did not answer. But that was a good question. Like, what do you? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear. It's sanctions. America will restart the Russian economy, and they will bring to what lines. I mean, that's the big question. The big question is really where are these lines, and is there an independent zone? Is there some kind of peacekeeping force? There really is like a million miles between here and an actual deal. It's just the speed of it, the speed of how fast it spun up. I think, the thing that really kind of ripped people the wrong way was that Saudi meeting. The fact that the Saudi meeting happened, it was like phone calls, 3 days later they're in Riyadh, and there's a bilateral meeting, no Ukraine, no France, no England, no Germany, no one else that has kind of been a part of it, no NATO representation. It is just the US and Russia. And in terms of international diplomacy, that's obviously a disaster compared to where you were before. In terms of negotiations, who knows what they've talked about? I mean, the people that were there, like the Treasury Secretary was there, and Marco Rubio was there. So I assume that the conversations were probably more about the sanctions than they were about whatever red lines they had in terms of territory. But yeah, it's this is going to air on Friday, so who knows? Everything moves so fast. Things might be different, but at least as we stand here on Tuesday, it is certainly it's very confusing. But then again, it's also confusing because so much happens so fast. Again, just what we said. In a week and a half, there were phone calls between Zelensky and Trump and Putin and Trump. And actually, let's reverse that order because that did matter. It was Putin and Trump first, then Zelensky. Then there's a meeting in Riyadh. Then there's a mineral deal. Then there's fighting over the mineral deal. Then there's public bickering between Zelensky and Trump. Then Macron has to haul his ass on down to D.C. and hope he doesn't hear about Candace Owens' podcast in the airport on the way to the White House. And then he's back, and all that happens in a week and a half. And also, who knows what happens in a week and a half from now? I joked on Wednesday with Brian Sack that if the mineral deal's done, the next Truth Social post could be brave, wise warrior Zelensky who fought for his people when nobody else thought he could. He's secured the next 20 proud years of Ukraine. Whatever. It's like we have no idea what's going to happen.
And by the way, it's actually Gulf of Mexico.
And then change it back. Whatever. Just wanted to see if you'd flinch. All right. So let's
interesting anecdote. The first person who asked a question yesterday on the French side from the and was an AP reporter.
Yes, but that's been
and it was on purpose. They chose her to
to do it because there has been this fight over the AP style book not recognizing the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. And so now the AP, which had been auto credited with being inside the White House and being on Air Force One, now is no longer. Yeah. And they're the first big fight of the Trump.
And they're suing.
White House. Yes, they're suing. And yeah. Look, my point of view is I'd be fine with the Trump team taking the AP out of automatic rotation on that for almost any other reason than fighting over the AP style book, where it's like just just do it because they don't have the reach anymore. Do it because the AP copy of this stuff isn't the primary way that people interact with it. Like, because you want to include new voices. Any number of reasons why. But this is it's so petty and stupid. But then again, you know, we knew what we were getting when we signed up. The warning was on the tin. Let's go to CPAC, which is something that you have mentioned a lot, and you've been on this beat, and I think very fairly for a long time. Like you mentioned, this is your sixth consecutive CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Convention or Committee, I forget which, who's, we're not even going to touch on the fact that their founder is just like a serial predator, apparently, who also has a drinking problem. Every time that this guy gets outed for allegedly, I'm going to assume, I have no idea. I'm just going to say that when repeatedly you have scandals that you've become aggressive with random men and they all say that you're slurring drunk beforehand, maybe. One might, maybe, allegedly, theoretically, we're laughing, it's parody, ha 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 ha. Anyway, the CPAC, it's amazing how much I have seen Trump's policy and official commentary be the kinds of things that you would get cheers for at CPAC. Yeah. Like, down to JD Vance's speech. That is something that, like, the crowd he was saying it to was almost a prop so he could look strong to an American audience.
Absolutely.
An American, he is hoping more independent than just CPAC, that this is something that resonates more broadly in America, but it certainly would get huge cheers if he gave the speech at CPAC.
And the sequence that you posted on the Greta Thunberg and Elon Musk joke. So for people who didn't follow, who are lucky enough to not have to follow all this too closely, he in Munich, he said, if the U.S. could take 10 years of scolding by Greta Thunberg, believe me, you guys can stand a few weeks of Elon Musk.
2 months of Elon.
And which was, okay, you're actually comparing a teenager who was chaining herself to buildings to the richest man in the world who has actual power inside the government of the most powerful country in the world. And also detail, you know, the environment is a real thing in Europe. Like, we don't wrap our apples in plastic. We try to take the train instead of flying. We don't use that much air conditioning. So that was a very strange joke. But as you mentioned, the pause when he's waiting for people to laugh, which is why I wrote on your Twitter, he thinks he's talking to a CPAC audience. And then it became clear he did the same speech at CPAC, pretty much. He's the first speaker at CPAC on Thursday morning at 10. And he does the Munich speech all over again. So, and people were...
to rapturous applause this time. I'm sure that the Thunberg joke got laughs there.
Lots of people were very, very happy. So yes, very interesting to speak to some of the movements who were present there, some of the European parties, and hearing them, you know, saying that they love the speech, but then you push them, and on some stuff they're extremely uncomfortable, and of course, you know, Ukraine being the main point. But also, all those countries have different ways of seeing things, and we have different laws. And, you know, there are countries that still have kings and queens. We beheaded ours, so we don't have them anymore. But
salute to that. There is a belief, and this is where the mega stuff kind of comes in, that, and I think that there's some math to back it up, that what in Europe is considered the far right, which we in America consider the populist right, is on the rise globally. It is on the rise. It's certainly on the rise in the UK. I mean, if we're going to say France, Germany, and the United Kingdom are, at least in the American perspective, the three kind of crown jewels of Europe that we focus on and look to as similar to us on some level, those rightward parties are on the march in all three.
I mean, they are, but it's a misconception to think that it's so different from what it used to be. I mean, that's one of the mistakes that Bannon did during Trump's first term when he tried to work with those parties, because he goes to people who are actually much more powerful in Europe than he's ever been in the US. Like, he goes to Marine Le Pen, who's at 40% at that time. He goes to FPO in Austria, that has been in power. So he's like, I want to help you guys. And they're like, yeah, we're good. Thank you. And in France, I'm not so familiar with the other countries, but in France, this tradition goes back to royalism, wanting kings back in power. It goes back to siding with the Germans during World War II. So those are actually much older traditions. And of course, in Germany, it's far right, goes back to Nazism. So those are older traditions to the MAGA movement. And I guess in the way the MAGA movement sees Europe now, there is a difficulty to understand that the sources of conservatism are completely different. The financing laws are completely different. The constitutional model is completely different. So you could have a way of seeing things. And I think the Europeans are very impressed at all the folklore around MAGA, the big shows, all the money. It's very, very controlled in Europe. You wouldn't have that. But fundamentally, there are a lot of things that just can't work in Europe, that can't be applied. Like that MAGA model cannot be applied to European parties as such. And especially the relation to Moscow or the Nazi salute. That cannot fly in Europe.
No, it doesn't. There's a little bit of a closer thing. Well, I mean, that is kind of America's perspective is totally foreign to, I think, a lot of the underpinning things that happened in Europe. Not only the history and the fact that it goes back so far, but the American mindset is one of a short memory. Like we are kind of constantly etch-a-sketching where we are, where we came from, what our makeup is, and kind of rebuilding. And I think that's part of the charm of America. I think it's part of what, draws people to America, is the idea that, like, if where you came from if the rules aren't set up to benefit you, then America is a place where the rules are constantly changing and you can constantly kind of shift something. So the idea that we've had multiple populist movements in America that have not had the scarring of, let's say, reestablishing a monarchy or bringing up the Third Reich. And so for us, it's like, look, people are upset about it. Obviously, there's not that we don't have an entire coterie of people saying that this could lead to authoritarianism. But by and large, the average American voter is like,
let's just try something new.
We'll see. Let's try something new. Maybe it'll work. Whereas, it's been fascinating, and I know that you haven't followed the German elections, although I assume that we probably have about the same understanding of it, just gazing from across the Atlantic. But it's like they have a parliamentary system where now the party that was in power, that had its worst election, is going to partner with the center-right party. So the second place party, the AfD, doesn't really have much of a say in the government. And that's like, for the general German public, that's something that they find that's good. Where in America, I think if the second place party didn't have much of a say in the government like that, then it would be a bigger issue.
And then the cordon sanitaire, that's what we call the sanitary cordon. I don't know what you call this, but we had that in France too. The last legislative elections. So, and thing is, I understand it's so difficult to understand from here, but World War II is really something we grew up with. And I don't want to repeat myself, but I spent 10 years with a great aunt who used to hide people during the war. And it was the one thing she was thinking of all the time. And sorry if I already told this anecdote, but at the end, I was not living with her anymore, but I would come to see her every Saturday if I could. And there was this one story that she was repeating, was that she was hiding a gentleman in Pitié-Salpêtrière, which is the big hospital in Paris, when France was being occupied, and a nurse comes to her and says, the Gestapo is coming tomorrow morning, so we shouldn't tell Mr. Levi, because then we'll get into trouble. And so she goes to that man and she says, they're coming tomorrow. We're not sure where they're taking you guys, but it's never good. My sources tell me no one is coming back. So I am going to put your little like metal suitcase on your bed. I'm going to turn around, and when I'm back, you're gone. Just find yourself a basement in Paris, anything, you need to go. And the guy was like, I'm just too tired. I've been hiding for too long. That can't be true. What they're saying, it's ridiculous. You know, those camps and everything. And so he left with the convoy, and that's the one thing she was repeating all the time. And the second thing is that where my parents live in Paris, there is still a number on the door of the basement. So that's the number my dad will see every time he goes to take a bottle of wine in the wine cellar, and that's the number of a classroom just across the street. Because when they heard the sirens of the German Air Force and they feared that Paris is going to be bombed, that's where they took shelter. Like every classroom had a place where they were. So this is fresh, and we're traumatized, and we still are. I mean, at least I'm probably the last generation who used to hear it firsthand from somebody who
from people that were involved.
But yeah, it's when I was at the Capitol on January 6th, and I saw that guy with a T-shirt that said 6 million was not enough. First of all, it took me a few seconds.
It's intense.
It took me a few seconds to even understand what it was all about. I thought it was another thing about stolen votes and fake electors in Wisconsin or something. And then I was like, oh, okay. And honestly, I don't feel bad that it's forbidden to wear that kind of T-shirts in my country. It's such a defining thing in our history.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's not a whole lot that we can say about modern politics to get beyond stories like that. So we will leave that go there. Claire Meynial from Le Poix, thank you so much for joining us as always.
Thank you so much.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio. If you would like to email the program, it is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Follow, find, and share video clips of the show. TikTok, Justin R. Young. Instagram, Justin R. Young. And you can catch me on Twitter, Justin R. Young as well. But it's YouTube, where we've cultivated our fantastic video audience. Shout out to the YouTube faithful. Politics is where you find me there. You can support us with a one-time donation on PayPal, paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash, and you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. The only way you get our bonus content, again, is our Substack, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. It's $3 a week, billed $12 a month, or $99 for the entire year. That annual plan, by far the most popular. Over 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. That's less than $1 an episode. Come on. What else do you want? But the only way you get your name read on the show is by our founding $10 tier. These beautiful people: L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, the Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, my mom, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want to add to that list? Come on. Bring it on. Take politics seriously. .com. We'll be back first for the paying folks on Monday, and then on Wednesday. Who do we have? I think we have somebody. on the show already booked. Let's take a little look-see here. Oh, we have a great guest, somebody new to the program. Katie Horvath. She is a former Facebook employee. She now writes about the internet and social media and the law. We will be talking to her. It'll be a good time. We'll catch you then. Till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss all three.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.